The moment a woman distances herself, most men panic. They text more, explain more, chase harder, and that is exactly why they lose her. If you've ever been ignored, left on red, or felt her energy suddenly go cold, stay till the end, because what you're about to hear will change how women respond to you forever. When a woman distances herself, most men immediately interpret it as rejection, and that interpretation is where everything starts to go wrong, because the moment you label it as rejection, your behavior changes. You become reactive instead of responsive. You move from calm to anxious, from grounded to desperate, from masculine certainty to emotional urgency. But distance is rarely about rejection in the way men assume it is. Distance is information. It is emotional language. It is a signal that something inside her has shifted. Not necessarily something about your worth, but about her internal state, her perception, or the dynamic between you. Women don't usually pull away because they suddenly forget your value. They pull away because something feels off, overwhelming, confusing, or unresolved inside them. Sometimes she needs space to process her emotions. Sometimes she feels she is investing more emotionally than she should. Sometimes she senses you becoming too available, too predictable, too centered around her. And sometimes, yes, her interest has dropped, but even that is communication, not cruelty. The mistake men make is trying to interrupt that communication instead of listening to it. Distance says, I need room to feel, and feelings cannot be negotiated. They cannot be argued with. They cannot be persuaded by logic, paragraphs, or promises. The more you try to force clarity, the more unclear things become. The more you demand answers, the more she feels pressure, and pressure shuts attraction down completely. What she is really observing in this moment is not what you say, but how you regulate yourself when you don't get what you want immediately. If you treat her distance as rejection, you collapse emotionally. You start chasing reassurance. You seek validation. You try to pull her back to where she was instead of allowing her to move through where she is. That behavior tells her you are attached to outcomes, not confident in yourself. On the other hand, when you understand distance as communication, you remain composed. You don't rush to fill the silence. You don't punish her for needing space. You don't disappear dramatically. You simply allow the space to exist without panicking inside it. This is where attraction is either rebuilt or destroyed, because emotional maturity is revealed most clearly when things are uncertain. Anyone can be confident when they are wanted. Very few can remain grounded when attention is reduced. When you stay steady during distance, you communicate strength without saying a word. You show that your sense of self does not rise and fall based on her mood. You show that you are not afraid of silence. And silence, handled well, becomes a mirror. It reflects her feelings back to her. It gives her the opportunity to miss you, to feel the shift, to realize what your presence added to her emotional world. Distance also exposes truth. If she returns, it's because the connection had substance. If she doesn't, it's because the alignment wasn't real to begin with. Either way, the space gives you clarity without costing you your dignity. And dignity is the foundation of attraction, respect, and self-worth. When you stop interpreting distance as rejection, you stop making it personal. And when you stop making it personal, you stop sabotaging yourself in moments that require calm strength and emotional restraint. Chasing feels natural when you care, but attraction does not respond to effort the way logic tells you it should. Most men believe that if they show more interest, give more attention, explain themselves better, or prove their intentions harder, the woman will feel reassured and come closer. In reality, the opposite happens. Attraction is not built on pursuit. It is built on emotional balance. The moment one person starts chasing, the dynamic tilts and attraction quietly begins to drain. What was once mutual curiosity becomes pressure, and pressure suffocates desire. Chasing communicates need, even when your words say confidence. It sends the message that her presence is more important to you than your own emotional stability. And the issue is not that caring is unattractive, it's that unregulated caring signals insecurity. When you chase, you stop allowing attraction to be voluntary. You turn connection into something that needs to be maintained through effort instead of energy. Women don't feel drawn to what feels obligatory or heavy. They feel drawn to what feels natural, spacious, and chosen. The moment she senses that you are afraid to lose her, she subconsciously begins to question why you fear loss in the first place. The more you chase, the more you reduce mystery. Attraction thrives in uncertainty, not anxiety. When you are constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly checking in, there is no room for curiosity. There is no emotional breathing space. She doesn't get to wonder about you, feel your absence, or reflect on how she feels without influence. Instead, she feels managed. And when a woman feels managed emotionally, she pulls away instinctively, not because she dislikes you, but because her autonomy feels threatened. Chasing also places her in a position of power she did not ask for. When one person pursues excessively, the other becomes the evaluator. She begins deciding when to reply, how much effort to give, and how close the connection goes. This imbalance doesn't feel romantic. It feels uncomfortable. Healthy attraction exists when both people feel free, not when one is trying to convince the other to stay engaged. The irony is that the harder you try to hold on, the more she feels the urge to step back. Men often confuse restraint with indifference, but they are not the same. Restraint is self-respect. It means you allow space without resentment. You respond instead of react. You don't disappear to punish, and you don't overextend to please. You trust that if the connection is real, it doesn't need chasing to survive. And if it does need chasing, then it was never rooted in genuine attraction, only temporary attention. Chasing teaches a woman that she does not need to invest to keep you, and people do not value what comes without effort. When you stop chasing, you restore balance. You give her the opportunity to step forward instead of always pulling her toward you. Attraction returns when effort is mutual, energy is equal, and presence is offered, not forced. Emotional self-control is one of the most misunderstood qualities in modern relationships. Many people confuse it with emotional suppression, detachment, or coldness, but true self-control is none of those things. It is the ability to feel deeply without being ruled by those feelings. It is the capacity to remain steady when emotions are triggered, uncertain, or challenged. When a woman pulls away or becomes distant, she is not only reacting to the situation itself, she is observing how you handle emotional pressure. Your response in these moments communicates far more than any words ever could. When emotions take over, most men become predictable. Anxiety leads to overcommunication. Fear leads to reassurance seeking. Confusion leads to explanations and emotional bargaining. While these reactions feel honest, they signal a lack of internal regulation. Attraction is drawn to emotional stability because stability feels safe, grounded, and reliable. A man who can stay calm when the connection feels uncertain sends a powerful message. He is secure within himself, not dependent on external validation to feel okay. Emotional self-control creates contrast. When tension appears and you do not escalate it, the emotional atmosphere changes. Instead of feeding uncertainty with urgency, you allow space for clarity to emerge. You don't rush to label the situation or demand answers. You allow emotions to settle naturally. This calm presence gives her the room to process her own feelings without feeling pressured or managed. And when she notices that her distance does not destabilize you, it often triggers reflection rather than withdrawal. What makes emotional self-control magnetic is that it shifts the dynamic from reaction to choice. You are no longer operating from fear of loss, but from confidence in your ability to handle any outcome. This removes emotional weight from the interaction. Conversations become lighter. Silence becomes neutral instead of threatening. Your presence feels grounded rather than demanding. Women are naturally drawn to men who don't make them responsible for their emotional state. When you can regulate yourself, you remove an invisible burden from the connection. Self-control also protects your dignity. Instead of saying things you later regret or acting out of insecurity, you remain aligned with your values. You don't over-explain. You don't chase closure. You don't seek validation in moments of vulnerability. This restraint communicates maturity. It shows that you respect yourself enough to pause, observe, and respond with intention rather than impulse. Over time, this consistency builds trust, not through promises, but through behavior. When a woman senses emotional self-control, she feels free rather than pressured. Freedom is essential for desire. Attraction cannot survive where obligation exists. By remaining emotionally grounded, you allow her to choose you instead of feeling pushed toward you. That choice is where genuine attraction lives. Emotional self-control doesn't demand attention. It earns it through presence, composure, and inner certainty. Silence makes people uncomfortable because it removes distraction. When communication stops, there is nothing to hide behind. No explanations, no reassurances, no emotional noise to soften reality. That is exactly why silence is so powerful. When a woman distances herself and you respond with controlled silence rather than panic, you allow the situation to reveal what is real instead of what is forced. Most men fear silence because they believe it means losing control. But in reality, silence restores balance and exposes the truth of the connection. When you fill every gap with messages, questions, or emotional explanations, you interfere with her ability to feel. You influence the outcome instead of observing it. Silence, on the other hand, removes your influence and leaves her alone with her own emotions. If her interest is genuine, she will feel the absence. She will notice the change in energy. She will reflect on what your presence brought into her life. If her interest is weak or inconsistent, silence will make that clear as well. Either way, the truth surfaces without confrontation. Silence also shifts the power dynamic in a subtle but meaningful way. When you stop trying to manage the connection, you stop placing her on a pedestal. You are no longer chasing reassurance or clarity. You are allowing events to unfold naturally. This does not mean you are playing games or trying to manipulate an outcome. It means you are confident enough to let reality show itself. Confidence is not loud. It does not announce boundaries or demand responses. It simply exists, and silence is one of its strongest expressions. What many men misunderstand is that silence is not absence of care. It is presence of self-respect. You are not ignoring her to punish her. You are not withdrawing to provoke a reaction. You are choosing not to overextend emotionally when the situation does not call for it. That restraint communicates strength. It tells her that you are emotionally independent, not dependent on constant interaction to feel secure. This often triggers curiosity because emotional independence is rare and deeply attractive. Silence also protects you from emotional self-sabotage. When feelings are heightened, words are often driven by fear rather than clarity. By saying less, you prevent yourself from overcommitting, over-explaining, or revealing insecurity. You give yourself time to observe patterns instead of reacting to moments. Over time, patterns tell the truth more accurately than words ever could. Silence creates the space needed to see those patterns clearly. Most importantly, silence forces alignment or separation. If she reaches out, it is because she wants to, not because she was convinced. If she doesn't, it confirms that the emotional investment was one-sided. In both cases, silence saves you from false hope and emotional confusion. It does not guarantee reconciliation, but it guarantees clarity. And clarity is far more valuable than temporary reassurance when your dignity and emotional well-being are at stake. Masculine confidence is often misunderstood as dominance, control, or emotional detachment, but in reality, it is revealed most clearly through restraint. It is the ability to hold back when every impulse tells you to push forward. When a woman distances herself, the instinctive reaction is to close the gap immediately, to restore certainty, to regain control. Restraint goes against that impulse. It is the quiet decision to pause, observe, and trust yourself enough to not force an outcome. That pause is not weakness, it is strength under control. Restraint shows that you are not ruled by urgency. You do not need instant reassurance to feel secure. You do not need to dominate the emotional space to feel significant. When you resist the urge to chase, explain, or demand clarity, you demonstrate internal stability. That stability is what makes confidence believable. Anyone can act confident when everything is going well. True confidence is revealed when things feel uncertain and you still remain composed. This composure communicates that your sense of worth is not dependent on her response. There is a natural polarity that exists in attraction, and restraint protects that polarity. When you overextend emotionally, you collapse that dynamic. You become too available, too predictable, too eager. Restraint preserves mystery without playing games. It allows attraction to breathe. It gives her space to move toward you instead of feeling pulled. When you stop trying to control the emotional direction, you allow desire to arise organically rather than through pressure. Masculine restraint also signals leadership at an emotional level. Leadership is not about commanding attention. It is about setting the emotional tone. When you remain calm while the connection fluctuates, you become the stable reference point. She feels that steadiness, even if she doesn't consciously recognize it. Emotional steadiness creates safety, and safety is essential for attraction to deepen. A man who cannot regulate himself during emotional uncertainty cannot provide that sense of grounding. Restraint also protects your self-respect. It prevents you from saying things you don't mean, overpromising or compromising your values just to keep someone close. It keeps you aligned with who you are, regardless of how someone else is showing up. That alignment is powerful because it communicates authenticity. You are not performing for approval. You are simply being consistent with yourself. Consistency builds trust, not through words, but through behavior that remains steady under pressure. When a woman senses restraint, she feels choice instead of obligation. She does not feel chased or cornered. She feels free to engage, to step back, or to reflect without emotional consequences. That freedom allows her true feelings to surface. Restraint removes emotional noise and reveals genuine interest. It is not about withholding affection. It is about offering it from a place of strength rather than fear. Power in emotional dynamics is not about control over another person. It is about control over yourself. When a woman distances herself, the situation itself does not take your power away. Your reaction does. The moment you respond impulsively, emotionally, or desperately, you hand your power over without realizing it. The right response is not dramatic, confrontational, or overly accommodating. It is measured, calm, and intentional. That response immediately shifts the dynamic because it places you back at the center of your own emotional experience instead of orbiting hers. The right response begins with restraint, not action. It means you do not rush to fill the silence, demand explanations, or seek reassurance. You allow the moment to exist without trying to control it. This is difficult because uncertainty triggers fear, and fear pushes people to act. But power lives in the pause. When you pause, you create space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain clarity. You choose how you show up instead of reacting automatically. That choice is where power is restored. Responding correctly also means respecting yourself enough to not overextend emotionally. You do not prove your worth. You do not negotiate your value. You do not shrink yourself to maintain access to someone who is pulling away. Instead, you remain consistent with your standards and energy. This consistency communicates confidence. It shows that you are not trying to win someone over at the expense of your self-respect. When a man maintains his emotional boundaries, he becomes grounded, and grounded energy is difficult to ignore. The right response also allows reality to unfold without interference. If she returns, it is because she chose to, not because she was persuaded or pressured. If she doesn't, you gain clarity without humiliation. Either outcome strengthens you because you did not abandon yourself in the process. Power is not about getting the outcome you want at any cost. It is about handling any outcome without losing yourself. That ability creates emotional resilience and long-term confidence. By responding with calm presence instead of emotional urgency, you subtly shift the frame of the interaction. You are no longer reacting to her behavior. You are responding from your values. This changes how you are perceived. You are seen as stable, emotionally mature, and self-assured. Even if the connection does not continue, your sense of self remains intact. That is real power, knowing that your worth is not determined by someone else's attention or withdrawal, but by how you carry yourself when the situation tests you most.